This is art. Any recovery topic is art. I'm your host, Nikki Q. I don't know if you know this, but today is my birthday. Did you know that?
I did not.
So I brought something special to do for when we finish the podcast. We're going to fight to the death. You get one and I get one, and we'll fight to the death. Do you want to hold on to it? No?
I'm all right.
Okay. All right.
I'm all right.
This is a recovery podcast. And what we like to do is dive into topics of recovery. And I prepared a few questions ahead of time. I will have some questions that will come up due to the conversation. And so we have a Facebook page. We have a YouTube page. Any recovery topic is art. And I know that a lot of people are going to want to know this question, the answer to this question right off the bat. So, are you wearing a wig?
No, sir.
Okay.
This is all the real deal. I would say probably it's been over 10 years since I got a haircut.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
I had long hair, but I cut it all off.
I think I remember that. Actually, I do.
Yeah.
I think you had long hair like whenever I first got sober.
Yeah, I did.
Like 2015-ish.
Yeah, that's when I entered into the program, 2015, and I had long hair. It was all the way down to my belt, and a lot of times I liked to wear it with braided, so tight braids to faux dreadlocks, I guess, maybe.
All right, right on. I didn't know that's when you got sober. So we got sober like right around the same time.
Yeah, October 1st for me. 2015.
Okay. All right. I was first time around December 15th, 2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
First time around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not many of us got it the very first time,
Yeah, I think we'll probably eventually we'll hopefully circle back to that. Like, I'm not ashamed or embarrassed or anything like that. I'll circle back to what happened. So I think it's super important.
Which is a great transition into my question of how did you come to be a therapist?
So I guess a little disclaimer, I did get some of the questions ahead of time, and this is one of the ones I got prior to the interview here, and so I did some reflecting back, and what really got me to be a therapist, right? So I went to the Butler VA domiciliary, and I had a therapist there who I won't name. However, I remember I was sitting there in her office, and I get in the field, it's called a trauma dump, basically, but it's basically went in there and just vomited my whole life story, all of the difficult times, adverse experiences, traumatic experiences, childhood, all these things. And I remember she looked at me across her desk with these big brown doe eyes, and it just looked like she wanted to cry. And it was she didn't even have to say a word. Just the look that she gave me was that validation, that my experience is, has not been rainbows and rose beds I guess it let me know that it's okay to not be okay. And, from that time forward, it was I don't know. I decided that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to help other people, because
Was that the first time you ever heard that it's okay to not be okay? I hear that a lot. I see it on t-shirts. It's very common to hear and see nowadays.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I do have a t-shirt that says that. I didn't buy it. Somebody gave it to me, but I mean, to be honest with you, she didn't even say it. She didn't even have to say it. Like, just, I don't know if it would be like the interconnectedness or like the co-regulation aspect or whatever, but just being able to pick up on her body language and her, like, I guess, vibes that, like, damn, like, you had a pretty rough go around, and it's kind of like, to no fault of your own almost. It's no wonder that this is your life path.
From first seeing a therapist to becoming a lead therapist yourself, it's quite an interesting path.
Yeah. So at the time, I was like the first person in my immediate family to get a college degree, right? Like, since then, a couple of my cousins, they've successfully completed degrees. Maybe some distant cousins, they probably had gone to college, but as far as like mom, dad, brother, none of them really pursued any education beyond high school. And I started here local. I went to Butler Community College and I got my associate's degree. And then from there, I went to Slippery Rock and got undergraduate degree, and took a little bit of time off between undergraduate and graduate school. I probably would have stuck with Slippery Rock, to be honest with you, but they had just started their master's degree program in social work, and it was not accredited yet. I would imagine it's probably accredited. Their program's probably accredited now, but I ended up going to, I don't know if I said it or not, but Edinburgh University for graduate school.
So at work at Silvermist, you use the ACT therapy model, correct?
Yeah, that's like the main.
In a nutshell, could you describe that to people who aren't familiar with it, or in a way that people could understand it clearly?
Yeah, so I guess acceptance and commitment therapy, right? Like, there's some of the major constructs of that, if you will, is values and committed action. And whenever a person experiences difficulty in their life, usually their behaviors and actions become misaligned with their values, right? And so that's one of the things we try to focus on while they're in treatment, is to get those behaviors and actions realigned with their values. And throughout that process, a person can move from presenting inauthentically to themselves and to the world, for that matter. But if the values and actions are aligned, then it allows them to be authentic, which is a huge part of life. Another construct of acceptance and commitment therapy is cognitive diffusion and self as observer, right? And it's, for me, I kind of like compare that
Billy,
to mindfulness.
I have a BS and BS. I don't have a master's. You're kind of losing me with some of the words.
Yeah, so like, I guess cognitive diffusion, right? Like, cognitive was like thoughts, and then if we think about diffusing, right, means like some sort of separation, like diffuse from something. So we want to like separate ourselves from our thoughts. Like, I am not my thoughts, and self as observer. I think that, really, to be honest with you, I think that it's like fancy ways of saying practicing mindfulness, really. But the self as observer, just like means that a person doesn't have to kind of like be on autopilot all the time, like, and not just be reactionary, right? And to kind of kick in that metacognition. Metacognition is the ability to think about our thinking, and to also like, notice the physiological responses in the body, like notice, like, are we getting anxious? Like, I'm a little anxious right now, to be honest. And just to notice that, and don't try to suppress it, just let it be. Like I say, I think it's a fancy way of saying mindfulness, and really what comes to mind is some of the other like kind of spiritual gurus, if you will. Ram Dass, right? Be here now. Be here now. Ram Dass presents the idea that that's like the highest level of enlightenment that a person can get to, is this ineffable present moment. Kind of like,
that seems to be a constant across different avenues of therapies and recovery, is mindfulness and the present. I was reading Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, and I got to the part where he wrote, be a witness to your thoughts. How did he say it exactly? He said,
right, so that would be like self as observer, what you're talking about. I have not read that book, but
it really changed my life, that book. It really actually did. And I knew to be mindful, I knew that this was something that I needed to work on in early recovery. I had first run across the idea of mindfulness in IOP, intensive outpatient therapy. I was like, what is this mindfulness? And it is being present, right? But to witness ourselves as the thinker, to witness our own thoughts from an outside perspective, it took me a couple of weeks to get through that section, because I have it on Kindle and I have it all highlighted, and it's just like pretty much the whole thing is highlighted, but it's in different colors, because I had a hard time trying to grasp the depth of witnessing myself as the thinker. And I'm like, but I'm me. I am the thinker. And to try to witness myself outside of that as a thinker looking at myself, what I realized in time was that it was like a key to a higher consciousness, and that's really what it started unlocking for me, which was interesting, because I struggled with my idea of God in the beginning. In step 2 of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And, I was like, I don't understand God.
Yeah.
I mean, I was really interested in getting to know who God was. So I joined a church. I became an official member of the congregation. I got baptized there. I helped start the Bible study there. I became a deacon at that church, and it was like one day I'm sitting there after years of going, and I thought, I know a lot more about the Bible now, but I don't feel any closer to God than when I started this journey. So I started looking into science and watching speakers on TED Talk and lectures and all of these different videos about the craziest rabbit hole I went down. And through this rabbit hole, I ran into videos about consciousness, and that really attracted me. It really intrigued me. So at the end of all of this looking into physics and consciousness, I came to have this inner understanding within myself that God wasn't a man, God wasn't a woman, God was genderless, but includes both genders. And it seemed to be, in a way that I could understand, the collective consciousness of all consciousness. If God is in all of us and we're all different colors and nationalities and we speak different languages, the one common denominator is that we're all conscious. And once I started going down along that path and that route, it really started making sense to me. And I had formed this idea of who I believed God to be, with an understanding that I couldn't put into a nutshell at the time, but ultimately that's what it came to be. You know, consciousness for me is divine. It's godliness. It is the key to me understanding God, but also having a relationship with God, because the more I read, like with Eckhart Tolle's book, getting to unlock a higher consciousness within myself is getting me closer to that God that I understand, you know?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I could go back and forth with you probably for several hours on that topic. Real quick though, I want to go back to, because I failed to mention one of the like important components of acceptance and commitment therapy, which is experiential avoidance, right? And this idea that like if something is discomforting, or if we break it down to categories like pleasure and pain, right? And so if the experience is painful, causes any sort of discomfort, well, then a person will go to great lengths to avoid that, right? Whether that be through substance abuse, or maybe it's through eating or pornography or materialism or consumerism, like playing video games. Like the experiential avoidance or escapism behaviors can be vast, right? It does not just pertain to substance use, because a lot of times, like people with mental health issues oftentimes have difficulty relating to those that struggle with substance abuse, right? And it's really most, if not all, maladaptive coping mechanisms or dysfunctional behaviors. Typically, they all boil down to like avoidance, or trying to escape discomfort, right? And in today's modern day and age, and it's even part of the human condition, right? Like we're hardwired to pursue pleasure, right? But now it's so much like instant gratification, right? And we want to make everything as easy and as simple as possible. And like the body's always trying to maintain homeostasis. It's kind of the idea. I don't know if you've read the book Dopamine Nation, right? But so they present the idea that pleasure and pain, right? And if we're constantly pursuing pleasure all the time, pleasure is going to be way up here, and the tolerance for pain actually goes down. That way, it's easier for the body to bring back to homeostasis, right? And so, like the more experiential avoidance a person engages in, the more discomforting the task is going to be whenever we face it, right? Like an example would be laundry, right? Like who likes to put their laundry away? And
I do. I like to put my laundry away.
I
do it every time I wash it.
You're an anomaly. but right, like, but the longer we avoid putting our laundry away, then eventually like more and more laundry is going to keep stacking up, and then whenever that day finally comes when we put it away, instead of having one load, we're going to have 2, 3, or whatever, right? So anyway, that's experiential avoidance.
By the way, they have, and you can look this up on, if you have a Spotify premium account, you have access to audiobooks. You can look this up there. They have it on Kindle. You can buy hardback copies of it through Amazon. It's called ACT Therapy for Dummies. And I've been listening to it on Spotify. It's a really good read. If you want to learn more about ACT therapy, I would highly recommend that book, because
you probably know more about it than I do, then, to be honest with you. I went back and forth.
Yeah, but I'm interviewing you, so
I know I went back and forth, right? Like, what therapy model do you primarily use? That was the question I got, and I was like,
well, I knew that ACT was in there.
But like, for insurance and billing purposes, right? Like, a person has to use some sort of evidence.
Companies.
You have to use some sort of like evidence-based practice, right? It's also important to like meet the client where they are at as well, right? And so like a person has to have like a wide array of therapeutic tools to use, if you will. But I think that probably my true approach is probably more of like an existential approach, or even like logotherapy, right? Like that's Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. He came up with logotherapy, and that's essentially finding like meaning and purpose to one's life, but also in that, like, kind of diving into the kind of like the spirituality of it, this idea of like spiritual alchemy, if you will. And that's like the alchemy process. That's where you would take something that's seemingly not valuable. A lot of people like get it confused, right? It's like, oh, well, you're going to take a piece of coal and turn it into gold. That's impossible, right? Which maybe it's not. I don't know. I'm no scientist, but if we look at like the underlying meaning of that, right? Like, take something that is seemingly not very valuable and turn it into something that is valuable. And that's like, I don't think it's necessarily in the Bible, and I could be also wrong. I think it might have came from like a Gnostic text, probably paraphrasing fairly close to a direct quote, but Jesus allegedly said that if human beings, if we knew the true meaning and purpose behind suffering, well, then therefore we could no longer suffer. And that's like the idea that all suffering is designed in order for us to reach our highest good, which is also kind of the construct of pronoia, which pronoia is the opposite of paranoia, right? It's like this attitude and outlook upon life that, like, regardless of how we utilize our free will, like regardless of the choices that we make, like the universe will automatically make adjustments in order for us to reach our highest good. Anyway, I feel like I got a little off track.
That's
there.
all right.
I think
I was listening intently.